In this video, I'm going to show you how to easily dial up some pumping compression in Ableton Live. This is an ultra satisfying way to energize your tracks, and it's awesome for both modern and vintage vibes. So let's not waste any time, let's go pump it up. What's up everybody, how's it going? I'm Brad Dollar, welcome to the channel, it's great to see you. So what is pumping compression? At the simplest definition, pumping compression is just heavy compression. And the way we think about it is heavy compression in time with the music that it's a part of. It's really prevalent in almost every subgenre of EDM, but you can still hear the same kind of compression on classic records from bands like the Beatles and Led Zeppelin. At its core, pumping compression is a method by which the volume of your audio signals undergoes a rhythmic transformation. And so essentially what happens is that the attack and the release of the compression itself becomes rhythmic in its nature, either by dialing in the attack and release by ear so it matches the tempo of the music, or like I'm about to show you in this example, using a single source track to trigger the compression itself so it's always in time and you have more control over the end result. You can achieve this effect on both plugins and hardware. Hardware is a little more difficult because you need a couple more components to actually make it work, but no matter what, as long as you can control the attack and the release of the compressor to match the tempo of the music, then you'll be in the realm of being able to create pumping compression. It used to be a process that took up a lot more time, but now, as I'm about to show you, it's super easy and you can do it in a few minutes. But before we get started, if you can do me a huge favor and hit the subscribe button, I would super appreciate that. I've been making music for all of my life, and this channel is about sharing my knowledge and experience with you so we can build a community around music together. Seriously, I couldn't do any of this without you. I appreciate your time watching and being here. Definitely want to see you again, so hit subscribe, hit like, and without further ado, let's go. All right, cool. So here we are in Ableton Live. I've already saved us some time and got a session together, and we basically just have a drum track and a synth track. Granted, the synth track has a few different layers bundled into it, so it's a little more full range, but pretty simple setup here. Now, we're in Ableton Live for a number of reasons. Firstly, I love this DAW, especially for creating new songs, for building things from scratch. But when it comes to this specific kind of pumping compression, one of the easiest places to hear it and show it is inside of Ableton. And a big part of that is because of their Glue Compressor, which is one of my favorite stock plugins ever. The Glue Compressor is basically like an SSL stereo bus compressor in plugin format. It responds in very similar ways, has an arguably similar tonality, and many of the same controls. You have an attack, a release, a ratio, threshold, and makeup gain, just like on an SSL bus compressor. You also have control of the overall range of the gain reduction that can happen, as well as a mix knob, which is always awesome to have. But the features we're especially interested in for this video are right under this drop-down arrow. And this is where we get into the heart of what's needed to create pumping compression. The main element you need to create controllable pumping compression is some sort of sidechain input to the plugin, and then some sort of source to feed that sidechain input. We're going to intentionally make the track pump using some sort of input source. Now in Ableton, doing that is super easy. So just to hear what's going on, here's the track with nothing else on it except a little bit of reverb on both the drums and the synth, just to fill them out, just so they're not just, dry splice samples, but there's no compression happening right now that we have added. So just gonna hit play really quick. Cool, pretty simple little part, nothing crazy, not a whole song, but it's enough to hear pumping compression happen. So in Ableton Live, the first thing to do is to set up that input track to create the pumping mechanism. The easiest way to do this is just to make a new MIDI track. You can hit Command-Shift-T as the shortcut, and then go down to Grooves on the left-hand side and type in, can you guess it, pump, and drag this one here, utility pump eighths. Drag this groove over onto the MIDI track. And then just to make sure that we are staying organized, we'll call this pumper. Okay, right now it's just a MIDI track and there's nothing happening. There's no audio going out, obviously no audio going in. It's just sitting there pulsing. So what we have to do is add something for it to trigger that the compressor can reference. You can do this with literally anything inside of the drums or drum rack category of Ableton Live, any of the stock kits, literally anything. Just pick one. Here's 606 core kit, always a good one. Drag that right onto pumper, and then just see which pad the pumping rhythm you dragged in is activating. The bass drum, easy. You can hear it there. It's going. Nice, great. So I guess if you liked this bass drum, you could put it in your mix if you want. We're not going to do that. I'm just going to mute this track because we don't actually need to hear this. But now that we have output being triggered from this mechanism that's making the pumping start, now we can feed that into our main compressor. You could put the compressor that you're going to use on your individual tracks, but for sake of time and this example being really clear, we're going to put it on the master bus. So it's really easy. You just go over here to audio effects and you can just look for Glue Compressor under Dynamics if you want. You can also type in Glue Compressor and it's right there, and simply drag and drop it onto the track. In this case, the master bus, like we said. Now, once we're here, we talked about the controls a moment ago. We're going to hit this drop down arrow and unveil the advanced features of the Glue Compressor. The main thing we're concerned with is the sidechain. What the sidechain does is it tells the compressor to look at whatever is coming into, well, the side, sometimes it's called the key input of the compressor, and to use that to reference the overall gain reduction. So instead of the actual source, so maybe it's the synth or the drums or the master bus, triggering the amount of compression and you're playing with the attack and release to get it right, the compression itself, all aspects of what it's based on are going to come from whatever you're putting into the sidechain. In this case, the pumper. Ableton, it's really easy. You just select where you want the audio input from. You could take it from the drums, you could take it from something else, but it ends up being a little messy. So what we're going to do is take it from the pumper. So once you've selected your sidechain input, then you just need to make the compressor start working. The best way to do this effectively without overthinking it is just to drag the threshold knob down, just like this. And then just do it until you start to hear it, and just listen to what's happening. So boom, we're here. We're at pumping compression. We are super close to the finish line. All we have to do is just make the timing line up with the overall rhythm of the track a little bit. And the first thing I usually like to do is go for the release knob. Honestly, if you just put it on A for automatic, it tends to be like spot on. Let's take a listen. It's a little draggy, but to me that's like the classic SSL bus compression sound, like the gain reduction just like almost in time, but just a little bit off, kind of catching up. If you didn't like that, you can of course speed it up. And you can instantly hear how that makes it sound a little more modern, whereas like, you know, A is like a little slower, a little more classic. Nice, so the pumping compression is definitely working. The next thing we want to do is just play with the overall amount of that's happening, and this is totally to your taste. So I'll kind of show you what I do. Typically if I'm doing pumping compression, I want it to be extreme and audible. I'm not trying to be like subtle with it. So I'll almost always drag the ratio all the way up. So I'm just getting as much compression happening as possible. And then I'm going to force the range knob down a little bit so that the threshold isn't like getting caught all the way at the top. So it's actually staying in time with the music. And I am going to move this release knob off automatic to be a little faster. I'm pretty good with the attack time, but you can play with that too. It tends to be a little truncated when it's too fast. And then if it's too long, it doesn't really pump at all. So, you know, I'm kind of like a middle or like, you know, slightly left of middle kind of guy. Nice, that's pretty on time, pretty consistent pumping. I might just bring the threshold down a little bit to make it a little more extreme, and then the make it gain up a little bit. I'm gonna bypass. Remember when you're adding any sort of gain to the back end of a compressor, it's always a good idea to bypass, unbypass to make sure that you're not like making the track too loud, which can be cool, but just make sure that you're not distorting things all the way down the line. So nice, that's pretty much it. That's pumping compression. All we did was set up a track to create the pumping itself. We used a MIDI track. We grabbed one of the free grooves that comes with Ableton Live, put it on. Then we selected that as the source of the sidechain that comes into the Glue Compressor. And now all the Glue Compressor is doing is referencing that pumper track and whatever it's triggering for the overall compression. From here, you can make the compression as heavy as you want or as light as you want. You can also play with the mix knob so you can have heavy extreme compression happening on time, but also bring it back so it's not just like sucking the rhythm out of your track, which can happen if the pumping is just too much. So let's do that now. Here it is out, in, out, in, out, in. Awesome. So those are the basics for getting pumping compression to happen inside of Ableton Live using their Glue Compressor and the sidechain functionality. So now that we know about the Glue Compressor, let's try to do the same thing with a different compressor. In this case, I'm going to use the Purple Audio MC77, which is their copy of an 1176, one of the best and most flavorful compressors to do pumping compression with. In Ableton, you'll know if a compressor has sidechain functionality. If you look down to the left of the plugin when you drag it onto the track, you'll see if it has the sidechain feature. And if it doesn't, this spot right here will be empty. After that, it's pretty simple. Just pick the sidechain input you want. In this case, we're going to pick pumper. It's the same pumping rhythm we used for the previous part of this example. Make sure you've selected key in and SC link for sidechain link, and go ahead and hit play. Now, caution, it'll probably be like super extreme, and you may have to play with different parts of your signal going into it to make sure it's not too crazy. But luckily, this plugin makes it really easy. And of course, it's DAW, so nothing's going to be destroyed. Cool. And so with all that set up, all you have to do is hit play, and then you can start adjusting. So right off the bat, it's pretty intense. One of the easiest ways to adjust the sidechain input inside of Ableton is right here from the gain knob. Cool. All right, so pretty heavy-handed, and this definitely needs a lot of finesse and a lot of tweaking, which again is why I love the Glue Compressor, because fire it up, select sidechain where you want it to come from, and it's pretty much there, sounding really good already. My main point is I just want to show you that it's possible. Nice, so just another flavor of pumping compression, and of course there are tons of plugins out there that you can use, all kinds of different flavors. You don't have to use any of these if you don't want to, but if you're in Ableton Live and you need a great compressor to go to, definitely try the Glue Compressor for pumping compression, and honestly, any kind of compression you want to use. And if you also want to try some other flavors for the same task, I definitely recommend the API 2500 from UAD as a kind of all-around good way to do that. And if you want some real heavy-duty crunch and smash, go for any 1176 varietal, especially the Purple Audio MC77 from Plugin Alliance. All right, so that's it. I hope this video was helpful. These are some of my easiest tricks to create pumping compression in Ableton quickly and be able to carry that same concept over to other compressors and other DAWs. So let me know if you want to see more tutorials just like this and what other topics you'd love to learn about. Thank you so much for watching, especially all the way here to the end. I really appreciate it. Please be sure to subscribe so we can hang out again, and look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.